This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good Friday afternoon. Welcome aboard. Operation Rising Lion is underway in the Middle East. Israel attacking 100 targets in Iran overnight. Iran responded by launching over 100 drones at the state of Israel.
I think at this point we've got to be focused on what looks like an all-out war between these two countries.
Mideast scholar Dan Hoffman.
The United States gave Iran every opportunity to negotiate a way out of this crisis, but it was quite clear that Iran was playing for time. And so I think Israel assessed that this was the last best chance to eliminate Iran's nuclear program.
The strikes by Israel were carried out in 5 waves and included over 200 aircraft. Dr. Rebecca Grant is a senior fellow at the Lexington Institute.
We're hearing 100 targets struck. They're trying to really dismantle and rubblize the key nuclear sites in Iran so that Iran can never get back to being as close as they were to a bomb before last night.
Several Iranian generals and 6 nuclear scientists were killed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year. It could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
National security expert Joe Cirancione says don't expect Operation Rising Lion to end anytime soon.
This is not a one-off. This is not going to be something that is over in 1, 2, 3 days. In order to really put back Iran's nuclear program, you need weeks of sustained attacks.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. did not assist Israel in any way in the military operation. President Trump is speaking today to Israel's prime minister. He met as well with his national security team at the White House. The lone survivor of that Air India plane crash this week walked away from the wreckage relatively unscathed. The 38-year-old man was sitting in seat 11A next to an emergency exit. He says he heard a loud boom before takeoff. Aviation expert Tom Costello.
So among the many questions for investigators, how did a single passenger out of 242 people on board manage to walk away from this horrific disaster with just minor injuries?
The survivor telling a local television reporter from his hospital bed that he cannot explain how he was able to live while all others perished. The man's brother in England describing the moment they heard from him.
He video called my dad as he crashed. He said, "Oh, plane's crashed. I don't know how I'm alive, how I exited the plane. This is a miracle."
It is a miracle indeed. Air India Flight 171 went down less than a minute after takeoff, killing more than 240 souls aboard and 50 others on the ground. The plane landed on the top of a college hostel just a couple miles from the runway there in northwestern India. A federal judge has ruled the use of federal troops is okay in L.A. President Trump says they're needed there to bring calm to the riot-wrecked city. California Governor Gavin Newsom says otherwise. He's suing the commander-in-chief, saying troops should not be militarizing our streets.
He is not a monarch, he is not a king, and he should stop acting like one.
Legal analyst Lori Levinson says ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court may have the final say on whether the troops can stay in L.A.
This is a showdown. It's a showdown between Donald Trump and Governor Newsom and between the executive authority and the 10th Amendment rights of the state.
A curfew remains in effect in Los Angeles, where dozens have been arrested the past several days. These protesters are upset over President Trump's immigration crackdown. Things got heated during a Homeland Security briefing in L.A. yesterday. A sitting U.S. senator was handcuffed after lunging at the cabinet secretary. That senator was California's Alex Padilla.
If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called Padilla's antics political theater.
His statement is absolutely ridiculous. This man burst into a room, started advancing towards the podium, elevating his voice, shouting questions. The way that he acted was completely inappropriate. It wasn't becoming a U.S. senator or a public official.
New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik mixed it up with Governor Hochul yesterday at a contentious hearing on immigration on Capitol Hill.
These are horrific crimes, and they're heartbreaking.
They're horrific crimes that are committed on your watch. You signed this executive order on your first day in office. You signed it again and again.
The governor and the congresswoman traded barbs over the sanctuary state status of the Empire State.
Rather than addressing the illegals in New York, you are prioritizing your far-left sanctuary state policies, which you put in place with executive orders.
Hochul was among 3 sanctuary state governors to testify before that raucous House hearing. Stefanik is the leading Republican challenger for her job next year. A massive protest is planned tomorrow in more than 1,800 cities nationwide. It's called No King's Day, meant to send a message to President Trump that we do not have a king. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has a warning to those who may take part in his state.
If you're driving on one of those streets and a mob comes and surrounds your vehicle and threatens you, you have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you. You don't have to sit there and just be a sitting duck and let the mob grab you out of your car and drag you through the streets. You have a right to defend yourself in Florida.
The No King's Day event coincides with a massive military parade tomorrow in our nation's capital, marking the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Tomorrow is also President Trump's 79th birthday. The multi-trillion-dollar Trump budget bill that's being debated in Congress contains a measure to defund Planned Parenthood. It prevents Medicaid dollars from being spent on abortions or abortifacients. Pro-choice activist Sarah Rosenbaum.
It was done to force the closure of Planned Parenthood. It's a nuclear bomb.
Tom Tiffany with Pro-Life New York.
Any money that they receive in Medicaid family planning dollars or for all the other services that they provide, that does free up money to engage in the surgical abortion business.
Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest abortion provider. It receives more than $500 million in government assistance every year. Still to come on the Noon Report for Friday, prison reform legislation, new texting scam making the rounds, and a rare feat at Oakmont. Randy Snavely explains in sports after this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The weekend is upon us. It's going to be a wet start for some, but it's not a complete write-off either. I'll have forecast details in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll look forward to that. Thank you very much. Let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. New York lawmakers are moving forward with a package of 10 prison reform bills. Yesterday, the last day of the 2025 legislative term, the state Senate advanced a bill that calls on the state's corrections system to be more transparent and accountable. The bill's in direct response to the deaths of 2 incarcerated black men inside state prisons in December and February. Onondaga County, New York Executive Ryan McMahon says despite reports to the contrary, there are no plans to abandon the massive multi-billion-dollar Micron computer chip making project in central New York.
The single largest capital investment in our community's history will happen in November and December of this year. Over $1 billion of investment.
McMahon says all the project needs to get going is an environmental impact study. He hopes operations at Micron can commence sometime in the year 2028. Tens of thousands of Pennsylvania children are exposed to dangerous levels of diesel pollution on a daily basis. That's according to a study by the group Clean Trucks Coalition. It claims hundreds of schools, child care centers, and public parks are within 500 meters of interstate highways with heavy truck traffic. Those sites serve almost 70,000 children every day. There's a healthy debate in Oneida County, New York, over whether taxpayer-funded groups like the police can block comments on their social media feeds. The Oneida County Sheriff's Office stands by its decision recently to do just that on all of its Facebook posts. Sheriff Robert Mashel telling Spectrum News it is is not censorship. It's just a prudent step toward protecting the public.
Those comments would quickly go negative, threatening, sometimes inciting people to retaliate against the person who was charged. If we begin to filter them, or if someone reviews them, now when we block someone from commenting, we're now obviously violating the First Amendment, which we don't want to do.
A Lemoyne College communications professor says the sheriff's actions are legitimate. However, he adds the move does run the risk of the sheriff's department losing public trust. Work is underway to beef up security in and around the Pennsylvania governor's mansion, and this includes a new, taller perimeter fence that is harder to scale. Security expert John Sansonito.
While anti-climb fences aren't necessarily going to be completely anti-climbable, they delay the process. They make it so that it takes someone longer time to be able to scale a fence, which buys time for security to react.
Sansonito says the fence is just one of the many security measures that's being adopted to keep the Pennsylvania governor safe.
I'm sure there's a lot of enhancements that we won't be able to see or may not even know about for security reasons, but it is good to see that they are finally taking the security of the governor and his family seriously.
Police say back in April, a Palestinian sympathizer firebombed the governor's mansion during Passover. Governor Shapiro is Jewish. Authorities think this is a hate crime. The governor and his family were not hurt, but that fire did cause about $1 million in damage. Wisner Park in downtown Elmira, New York was shut down yesterday after a person there, for whatever reason, set themselves on fire. The flames were extinguished by some bystanders. Police say the fire was self-inflicted. There was never any harm to the public, but what a spectacle there. The person who set themselves on fire is being treated at a local hospital. And there's a scam making the rounds involving jury duty. It is coming in the form of a text message. Details new at noon from Family Life's Brian Query.
2 Westmoreland County women lost a combined $5,000 after falling for a federal jury duty scam. According to the Westmoreland County District Attorney's Office, both women received a text message claiming to be from the clerk of courts with a phone number, and a person at that number claimed the women missed federal jury duty and needed to pay a fine or be subject to a bench warrant. The Federal Trade Commission said no court or government agency will ever ask for payment by phone or personal information like a social security number. Anyone who receives similar messages is asked to contact authorities. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Let's switch gears, talk sports. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an albatross. Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snedley. Baba got to start with the U.S. Open Golf Championship. It's only happened 4 times in the history of this tournament. From 286 yards away, Patrick Reed hit a 3-wood. The ball went into the hole. It was his second shot on a par 5, a double eagle, or more commonly called an albatross. Only the 4th time it's ever happened. Another really big shot went in for Leon Draisaitl in overtime, and it gave the Edmonton Oilers a 5-4 victory over the Florida Panthers. The Oilers were down 3-0 after the first period to Florida, but then scored 4 unanswered goals and held the lead until 20 seconds were left in regulation. The Panthers' Sam Reinhart found the back of the net to send the game into the OT. How big was this win for the Oilers? Well, the series is now tied at 2 instead of them trailing 3-1. On to baseball. The Yankees completed a 3-game sweep of Kansas City with a 1-0 shutout of the Royals. The Mets also swept their series with the Nationals winning 4-3. That is 6 wins in a row for the Amazons. The Pirates fell to the Cubs 3-2. Elsewhere in the Bigs, Detroit knocked off Baltimore 4-1. Texas pounded the Twins 16-3. The Rangers hit 6 home runs in the contest. Houston edged the White Sox 4-3. Colorado outlasted San Fran 8-7. And the Brewers shut out St. Louis 6-0. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy Man. Still to come on the Noon Report, a Friday edition. We'll have a Christian response to the assisted suicide debate. You're going to want to stick around for that. Plus, closing time at the state capitals, and Kev's got that Father's Day weekend forecast for you in 4 minutes.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Isaiah 52:7 is one of the most inspiring verses in all of Holy Scripture. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. Well, in recent day, 2 people passed away, each of whom, in their own unique ways, had beautiful feet. Phil Robertson shot to celebrity status through the unlikely medium of reality television. Duck Dynasty showcased the beards and the crazy Louisiana lives of the Robertson family and their multi-million-dollar duck call empire. America found the family's innocent quirkiness delightful, and unlike other TV families, found their stability reassuring. Mom, dad, uncle, sons, in-laws, and grandkids, they all seemed to genuinely care for each other. They didn't flaunt their wealth. They didn't abandon the values that preceded their wealth. Instead, the Robertsons prayed together, played together, ate dinner together, and went to church together. Now, I have no personal knowledge whatsoever of Phil Robertson's feet, but it's likely they were, shall we say, well curated by the woods and the swamps that he spent his life walking. However, if Isaiah is indeed correct, his feet were beautiful. Though his early years of addiction and adultery are well documented, Robertson's life was transformed by Jesus Christ at age 28. And there was rarely a moment afterward that he wasn't sharing the good news with someone, whether friends and neighbors, American presidents, his TV audience, or huge crowds. Another person who had beautiful feet was Peggy Powell. Peggy passed away back in April. Her quiet, steady love for Jesus Christ and for others reached an immeasurable number of people. As her obituary declared, and I quote, Peggy used her gift of teaching in many ways in their church's college, junior, and high school departments, and at Vacation Bible School and backyard Bible clubs. Her Bible stories told with flannel board were legendary. And most significantly, in 1969, the Powells helped start Abilene Young Life, a ministry that shares the gospel with teenagers, which is still going strong, end quote. In fact, at her memorial service, many people shared how, early in their marriage, Peggy and her husband refused to buy furniture for their house until they could start that Young Life Club. Peggy spent her life praying for the lost, literally by the millions, and she lived a life that's perhaps best described as a long obedience in the same direction. Now, Phil Robertson was famous, but the work of Christ in his life was far more significant than duck hunting or reality TV. Peggy's life of quiet faithfulness also affected thousands, from kids and grandkids to neighbors and relatives to the young and the old. Like Robertson, her dramatically different life was also marked by Jesus Christ. Both committed their lives and their beautiful feet to publishing salvation to others. Their faith is now sight. Thanks be to God. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Timothy Paget. June 30 is the close of the Colson Center fiscal year. To meet our financial goals and to be on solid footing for next year, the Colson Center is looking right now for 150 additional Cornerstone monthly partners. Our Cornerstone partners not only make these daily Breakpoint commentaries possible, they provide financial stability for all the programs and the projects of the Colson Center. And Cornerstone partners receive special resources, discounts, and other gifts from the Colson Center. To learn more about becoming a Cornerstone monthly partner of the Colson Center, visit us at colsoncenter.org/cornerstone. That's colsoncenter.org/cornerstone. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet.
Thank you, John. Outside we go. Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Clouds and sun. Couple showers and thunderstorms in parts of western and central Pennsylvania and southwest New York. High temps mid-60s near Lake Ontario to near 80 in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Cloudy tonight. A few showers and rumbles. Low temps 50s and low 60s. Now for the weekend, relatively cool for the time of year. The bulk of any showers and storms will be Saturday in Pennsylvania. Elsewhere and otherwise, just very spotty activity. High temps tomorrow. 60s and low 70s. Mainly 70s on Sunday.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. It is Friday, folks. Congratulations, you made it the 13th of June. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life. Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire at New York Families. A big week, an historic week, really, in New York State. Jason, with this vote in the Senate to approve doctor-assisted suicide, condemnation over this legislation is widespread. You've got New York Catholic Conference, you've got the American Medical Association, both speaking out quite vocally in opposition. What most concerns you about what happened Monday night in the New York State Senate?
I think I'm most concerned with the long-term ramifications of what happens. Legislators, they tend to think of the immediate rather than the long-term implications of their public policy decisions. And so when you pass something like assisted suicide today, they say it's only for a handful of people who are in their final days of life, and it's not going to harm anybody. It's fear-mongering to say anything different. But then you look at what has happened in other countries around the world. We see in Canada, for example, the great expansion of these assisted suicide laws that started very similar to what New York has and has now become more euthanasia and leading to assisted suicide for the depressed, the mentally ill. You see in Europe where now children can fall victim to these types of things. So it really is problematic, and I think we are just continuing to slide towards a culture of death. That's my concern for the Empire State.
Yeah, they say this is modeled after the Oregon law on assisted suicide, but this one may go even further. Michael, I know you're not dealing with it directly, but I'd love to get your thoughts as well. There's no safeguards in place here, no required mental health screenings for anybody who wants to off themselves, for lack of a better term here. Michael, I don't mean to be grotesque, but that's exactly what this is. I want to ask you, is assisted suicide one of those issues where people of faith can agree to disagree, or do you see it as an issue where Christ followers need to be dogmatic in their opposition to this?
You know, I think Scripture is very clear on this, Bob, and Christian theology is as well, that the taking of innocent human life, and that includes by suicide, assisted or not, is wrong. The Bible tells us that God is the author of life, that we are not our own, we were bought with a price, and as Christians, our support for the sanctity of life should always extend from conception until natural death. I do want to take this moment just to commend Jason and the wonderful folks that support New York Families for praying and engaging so valiantly on this issue over many years that is so close to the heart of God. And we here in Pennsylvania join you in praying for hopeful veto of this horrible legislation.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask you next, Jason. The million-dollar question is, what will the governor do? I know she's under tremendous pressure going into an election year next year. Does she sign this legislation, making New York just the 12th state to go down this road, or is she going to reject this medical aid in dying bill?
Well, the governor has been tight-lipped about her position on this issue. Her staff has simply said they'll look at the issue should it pass the legislature. I don't think it's something that she will sign very quickly. My hope is that she'll take time. She will really look at the arguments on both sides, frankly, on this to see and to make an intelligent decision. Governors tend to have to be the grown-ups in the room. Legislators can do what legislatures are going to do, but then at the end of the day, the governor has to sign that piece of paper, sign that bill into law. So they tend to be a little more of the grown-ups. I hope that she will look at this, she will see the legitimate concerns, and will veto that legislation. We also pray that this governor's heart will be turned to respect human life when it comes to this issue.
Yeah. Michael, Jason had mentioned Canada, and I thought it was interesting. You know, this is a country that 9 years ago nationalized doctor-prescribed death, and today suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in Canada. I think 1 out of every 30 deaths in Canada is an assisted suicide. Begs the question, in states or countries for that matter that permit this practice, is it true that the overall suicide rate is higher?
It is true, Bob, and honestly that's not a surprise since the law is a teacher. When the government condones and endorses the taking of innocent human life, that devaluation quickly spreads across society with people believing that induced death is a good thing, which it obviously is not. Studies in numerous states, Vermont and Oregon and other places, Switzerland and the Netherlands, that have embraced this assisted killing have seen overall suicide rates grow. And when we consider the mental health crisis in our nation and that certain population groups, especially older women, seem to be targeted by that, the Christian compassionate thing is to oppose this kind of evil.
Yeah, well said. Well, New York's primary election, Jason, is coming up later this month, but it seems everybody's fast-forwarding to next year and what happens in 18 months. The race for governor got really interesting. Democrats aren't really sure what to do about Antonio Delgado. Republicans seem keen on Elise Stefanik, who had a press conference, a fiery one at that, this week in Albany. Do you anticipate 2026 to be a real barn burner? And do you think that the era of one-party rule may come to an end next year in New York?
Well, I think in politics, a year from now is essentially an eternity. 5 days from now is an eternity in politics these days. So it's tough to tell what's going to unfold over the next number of months. But based on current polling, I can tell you that Representative Stefanik is polling very tightly behind Governor Kathy Hochul. So that will be a race to watch, and every legislative seat will be up. It does seem that while the numbers seem to be drawing further and further apart as far as enrolled Democrats versus enrolled Republicans in this state, that even Democrats have had enough and have been coming alongside and voting for Republican candidates. So it could be that 2026 could restore a Republican governor into that seat, or it could mean that Republicans pick up seats in the legislature as well. So it will be a year to watch.
Will be indeed. Michael, just a couple more weeks left in the legislative term. Hard to believe it's almost over. A lot of bills that you are keeping a close eye on. What are some of the items that our listeners should be paying attention to that could see action before the end of the month?
Well, as we come to the close of budget season, we call it sort of crunch time for us at Pennsylvania Family Institute. That's because crazy bills and dangerous bills get proposed and deals are struck to get a budget across the line. One of the things that we're obviously been working on for some time, we've talked about here, is the Girls Saving Women's Sports Act that passed the Senate. We'd love to see that pass the House to get that on Governor Shapiro's desk to make him sort of fish or cut bait on the issue of girls' sports. Yeah. We're also obviously watching the marijuana issue, which the governor says is needed to close the budget gap, but would actually expand the budget gap if they pass such an egregious piece of legislation. So we're watching that, and several other ones in the House on issues like abortion and trying to restrain school choice.
Yeah, got some checks and balances in Harrisburg that aren't quite there yet at Albany, so we'll see how things pan out in the final days of this year's term. Well, today is the final broadcast of the summer. We bring the curtain down on Capital Connection for just a couple of months. Fear not, though, it'll be back in the fall. But you guys are extremely busy, even in the summer. I was wondering if you could just let our listeners know what's going on. Jason, I'll begin with you at New York Families. And how can we be in prayer for your ministry?
Well, I appreciate that. You know, what happens immediately after the end of the legislative session is we take a short break. That first 6 months of the year is very intense. There's very little time to take a day off or even evenings off. And so we'll take a little break for a week or two, and then we go into strategic planning mode. And so we're starting to plan not only for the coming legislative session in 2026, but really for the next few years from now. What do we have to do to be prepared to win in this state? You mentioned it earlier in light of 2026 coming, and so this is an important planning time for us as we think, how can we change our state in the years to come?
Yeah, those who fail to plan to fail. I read that somewhere on a plaque, Michael. But summer is busy as well at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. What do you have going on? And let our listeners know, because they take prayer seriously, how they can be in prayer for the PA Family Institute.
We always appreciate prayers, especially for what we do in the summer. This year, our 25th annual City on the Hill Youth Leadership and Worldview Conference. And this summer, it's the last full week of July, we have a record number of teens coming, 84 of these young people. They'll be sworn in as mock senators, hear great worldview teachers, make lasting friendships, and discover the leadership skills that God has given them as they engage with each other, culminating with a debate on the Senate floor at our state capitol. We know that God does tremendous things in the lives of these young people, and that's because they're prayed for. And certainly to have our listeners joining in praying for the students who will be at City on the Hill. They are our future, and we've seen God do wonderful things with them, and we look for that in the future as well.
And who knows, maybe one or two of them may be back in Harrisburg as an elected representative someday. That is certainly an awesome ministry you got going on. And speaking of ministry, it takes money to make ministry work. If you have been blessed and touched and motivated, encouraged by the work of these two gentlemen and what they bring to the table on Capital Connection, we encourage you to give to their ministries if you can. If folks would like to give to New York Families, where can they find you, Jason?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And the Pennsylvania Family Institute, Michael?
PAFamily.org.
All right, gentlemen, have a wonderful summer, and we'll be back in the fall. Thank you. I love the work of the Capital Connection crew, Michael Gear and Jason McGuire. You can listen to all our original podcasts, including Capital Connection at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. A front draped and stalled across southern Ohio, Maryland, and Delaware will be the focus of our weekend weather. Nearer the front, Pennsylvania looks kind of wet at times. Farther north, though, it looks much drier. Here are the details for this afternoon. Clouds, some sun, a couple showers and thunderstorms in parts of western and central Pennsylvania and southwest New York. High temps, mid-60s near Lake Ontario to near 80 in central and eastern Pennsylvania. Cloudy tonight, a few showers and rumbles, low temps 50s and low 60s. Now for the weekend, relatively cool for the time of year. The bulk of any showers and storms will be Saturday in Pennsylvania. Elsewhere and otherwise, just very spotty activity. High temps tomorrow, 60s and low 70s, mainly 70s on Sunday.
All right, thank you very much. Sunday is also Father's Day. Some $24 billion with a B dollars will change hands for the holiday, and that's a record, according to the National Retail Federation, up more than 7% from last year. 3 out of every 4 Americans say they plan to celebrate Dad in some way on Sunday, as well they should. The average American going to spend just under $200 this Father's Day. Money well spent. Happy Father's Day, one and all. And that's our world, the world we live in, Friday, the 13th of June. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.